The Terran Empire had lived so long in power that it no longer remembered what fear felt like. For thousands of years, their fleets had burned across the stars, their banners rising over world after world. They did not ask for friendship, nor did they ask for understanding. They only asked for surrender, and when surrender was refused, they took everything by force. Their starships were like floating cities, vast engines of war bristling with weapons. Their armies were endless, raised from conquered species who fought, not for honor but because their chains demanded it. To most in the galaxy, the Jarans were not simply rulers, they were a storm, a shadow that could not be resisted. Entire civilizations had vanished beneath their march, and none had ever returned to tell of victory against them. It was this empire, drunk on its power, that first turned its eyes toward the small blue planet humans called Earth. From the distance of their high councils, Earth looked fragile. A young species, scattered colonies, technology still rising, ships that could not rival the massive dreadnoughts of the Empire. The Terran lords laughed when they first studied Terran transmissions. They are dreamers, one counselor said. Their art is loud, their stories full of pride, their voices filled with a belief they cannot defend. The Emperor himself had called them a curious people. Not dangerous, not worth worry, simply another primitive fire that would soon be smothered. To him, Earth was nothing more than another system to add to his throne. But the elders of other species whispered, warnings in the shadows. They had seen fragments of humanity's rise. They had watched old wars of Earth, bloody conflicts fought not with fleets but with grit, with stubbornness, with a kind of madness that did not bend even when destruction seemed certain. One elder, a surviving historian from a species the Terrans had long since broken, spoke quietly to the council. "Be careful," he said. "These humans, they are not like others. Their history is carved from struggle. Their world taught them hunger, fire, storms, and endless wars among themselves. They are creatures of survival. Push them too far, and they will not break. They will bite." The Terran Council scoffed. They had heard such stories before. Every new species was said to be different. Every new race was said to have a secret strength. But the Empire had crushed them all, and so, with arrogance thick in their hearts, they ignored the warnings. Scouts were sent into Terran space. Silent ships, cloaked and hidden, passed into the dark edges of human territory. They returned with reports that only confirmed the Council's pride. Yes, they are industrious, the scouts admitted. Yes, their colonies are growing, but their fleets are small, their defenses thin, their unity is recent, fragile. They cannot stand before us. The Emperor leaned back upon his throne of steel and bone, his eyes burning with pride. Then it is decided. Humanity will kneel. Their world will serve the Empire. Their colonies will be harvested. Their warriors will march beneath my banners. The humans will be made to remember their place. In the halls of power, his words were greeted with thunderous applause. But beyond the halls, the stars listened in silence. For the truth was not what the Emperor believed. Earth was not fragile. Earth was not weak. Humanity was not just another race among the countless stars. Humanity was something the galaxy had not yet seen. They were builders, yes. Dreamers, yes. But they were also something far more dangerous. They were stubborn survivors. No storm had broken them on their homeworld. No famine, no war, no terror had ever erased them. They carried scars of history that the Terrans did not even understand. Where the Empire believed in endless conquest, humanity believed in never yielding. Where the Terran saw weakness, humanity held quiet fire. And so, when the first shadow of the Empire's fleet crossed the border of Terran space, Earth's leaders did not cower. They sent out one message. Not long, not decorated with empty words but simple. Turn back. Do not cross into Terran space. It was a message of warning, not submission. A message that carried a strange weight. A gravity that unsettled even those who read it in translation. For behind its words was not fear, but certainty. A certainty that the Empire could not yet see. But the Terrans laughed. To them, This was nothing but arrogance from a small, untested race. They would teach Earth its place as they had taught countless others. They would burn the blue planet's skies. The Empire believed humanity's story was already written, but Earth had only just begun to turn the first page. And in the silence between stars, a storm waited. The first Terran fleet did not come with diplomacy. It came with arrogance. Sleek warships, black as night and shaped like knives, cut through the edge of Terran space. They did not ask permission to enter. They did not announce their presence. To the Terran Empire, the act of trespassing was itself a declaration. We do not need your consent. The humans noticed quickly. On Mars, the defense network picked up strange signals. On Europa, mining stations saw glimmers of movement in the dark void. On Earth itself, deep space telescopes caught the faint reflection of ships crossing the stars. Humanity knew immediately. These were not merchants, not explorers. They were intruders. Earth's leaders met in silence. The United Terran Council, once so divided by politics, felt the chill of something larger than them all. For years they had heard rumors of the Terran Empire, stories carried by distant traders, whispers of a power that ruled with chains and fire. Some dismissed those tales as exaggerations, but now, the truth stood at their borders. The decision was made quickly. Humanity would not strike first, but it would not bow. A single message was sent across the stars, carried on frequencies strong enough to reach every Terran ship in Terran space. Turn back. You know nothing of us. Do not cross into Terran space. The message was calm, but inside those words was steel. It was not a plea. It was a warning. When the Terran commanders heard it, they laughed. To them, it sounded like the growl of a small animal standing before a predator. One of the commanders, Admiral Vare, sneered at his officers. They dare warn us? These creatures do not even control more than a handful of star systems. They speak as though they are a power equal to us. Let them bark. We will teach them silence. So the fleet pushed deeper. The first Terran colony to fall was a mining outpost orbiting Proxima Centauri. It was small. Less than 6,000 souls lived there. Families, engineers, miners, farmers who had left Earth to build something new. They had no weapons to fight an armada. Their defenses were a few orbital guns and a single escort ship. The Terrans burned it in less than an hour. The orbital guns melted under the fire of plasma cannons. The escort ship was torn apart by missiles. The colony domes cracked open like glass, venting precious air into the void. Children died clutching their parents. Families vanished in silence, their last screams swallowed by the stars. When news reached Earth, grief turned to fury. The people of Proxima were not soldiers. They were pioneers, dreamers who had carried humanity's hopes into the dark. Their destruction was not war, it was slaughter. Yet still, Earth did not rush blindly into vengeance. A second message was sent to the Empire. This is your last chance. Do not become the fools who crossed into Terran space. The Terrans once again dismissed it. They believed humanity's calm was weakness, not patience. They believed their firepower had broken. Terran Resolvi. To prove their dominance, they struck again. This time they descended upon a rim colony. New Carthage, a settlement carved into the surface of a barren rock world. The colony had defenses stronger than Proxima, and its people refused to surrender. They fought with every tool at hand. Mining lasers were turned against warships. Cargo drones became improvised weapons. Civilians stood side by side with soldiers. The battle was hopeless. Still, New Carthage fought for days, refusing to bow. When the Terrans finally reduced the colony to ash, they lost more ships than they expected. Their arrogance had blinded them to the humans' stubbornness. Admiral Vare cursed their resistance but smiled as his ships counted their dead. Let them fight, he said coldly. Every loss we take will be repaid tenfold when Earth kneels. But he did not understand. Each loss was not weakening humanity. It was igniting it. On Earth, mourning turned into resolve. Images of Proxima's ruins, of New Carthage's brave defense were broadcast across every screen. No one remained untouched. Farmers, engineers, students, workers. Everyone understood that the Empire was not a distant rumor anymore. It was here. It had killed their people, and it would not stop unless humanity stopped it. In the hidden shipyards of Mars, warships that had slept unfinished were brought to life. On the oceans of Earth, submarines were refitted into orbital carriers. In the colonies of the Belt, workers abandoned mining to forge weapons. Humanity's great machine began to turn, not out of lust for war, but out of the need to protect their own. And yet, the warnings continued. Terran diplomats sent envoys with clear words. Humanity did not seek conquest. Humanity did not seek to expand beyond what it had built. But the message was always the same. Leave. Do not test us. Do not cross this line. The Terrans, wrapped in their pride, heard only weakness. To them, the more humanity warned, the more it sounded like fear. They could not understand that restraint was not fear, but control. So, the Empire prepared a larger strike. No more outposts, no more colonies, they would go for the heart. Their fleets turned toward Sol, toward Earth itself, but in their arrogance they did not see what they had awoken. Because when humanity looked at the ashes of Proxima, when they remembered the defenders of New Carthage, they did not feel despair. They felt unity. They felt fire. And deep within the silence of the Terran command halls, one truth settled over every leader, every soldier, every parent. If the Empire truly crossed into Terran space, they would awaken something that had been waiting for centuries, something the galaxy had never seen. The Terran Empire thought humanity was cornered. They believed 2 destroyed colonies would frighten the Terrans into silence. But what the Terrans did not understand was the heart of humankind. Every loss did not break them, it hardened them. Every fallen colony did not weaken Earth, it united. For the first time in centuries, humanity spoke with one voice. The governments of Earth, once divided by borders, rivalries, and politics, now stood shoulder to shoulder. There was no longer us and them, no longer nations clinging to old grudges. There was only humanity, and humanity was preparing for war. On Mars, shipyards that had long been secret projects now burned with furious life. Giant cranes swung across the red skies, hauling steel as massive hulls took shape. Warships that had been hidden beneath the sands for decades, waiting for a day of need, finally rose. Their armor gleamed in the thin Martian sunlight, black and silver, carved not for fear but for survival. On Earth itself, the oceans carried secrets of their own. For years, humanity had built in silence, creating ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Beneath the waves, deep dock hangars opened and titans emerged. Carriers the size of floating cities breached the water and climbed into the skies. Their engines roared with power, their hulls scarred with old experiments, their names etched with promise. Valiant Dawn, Iron Resolve, Spirit of Earth, everywhere, humanity prepared. In the asteroid belt, miners who had once dug for ore now forged, railgun shells longer than buildings. On icy moons, refineries poured liquid fire into tanks for plasma weapons. Even the smallest outposts, fragile domes clinging to rocks in the void, turned their tools into defenses. But it was not only machines that stirred, it was people. The images of Proxima's destruction and New Carthage's fall had spread like wildfire. Every screen, every broadcast carried the same message. The Empire is here. Our people are dead. We must stand. Farmers left their fields to join defense units. Students trained in orbital academies. Scientists abandoned their laboratories to work on weapons. Even those who had never held a gun before learned to fight. Humanity was not simply building a fleet. It was awakening an army made of every soul, every will, every heart that refused to bow. Among them were veterans of Earth's old wars. Soldiers who had once thought their time of service was over now returned, scars and all, to teach the young. They told stories of battles where the odds were impossible, yet survival was achieved. They reminded the youth that humanity had always been underestimated, always told what it could not do, and always proved the world wrong. This awakening did not happen with anger alone. It happened with love. Humanity was not fighting for conquest, not for glory, not for an emperor's pride. They were fighting for their children, for the memory of the lost, for the right to live free. The Empire could never understand this. Their soldiers fought because they were ordered. Their armies marched because they were chained. But humans, they would fight because they chose to, and that made them dangerous in ways no calculation could predict. In the command halls of Earth, the United Terran Council met each day. Maps of stars glowed across the walls, showing where the Terran fleets had moved, where colonies had fallen, where humanity had to hold. The room was heavy with silence, but it was not fear. It was resolve. At the center of those halls stood Commander Elias Reeve, chosen not because he was the most powerful, but because he was trusted. His voice carried calm steel when he spoke. They think we are weak. They think we are fragile. Let them. But we will not fight like them. We will not scatter. We will not kneel. When they come, they will see the storm they have awakened. And so, humanity prepared not with empty words, but with action. Training camps filled the mountains of Earth. Starfighter pilots practiced in endless drills above the clouds of Titan. Engineers tested new weapons in the dark craters of the moon. Every day, the hum of forges, the roar of engines, and the voices of soldiers echoed across human space. The galaxy watched. Traders whispered of strange movements in Terran territory. Spies reported sightings of ships no one had ever seen before. Neighboring species wondered if the humans truly had the strength to stand against the Empire, or if they were simply digging their own graves. But to humanity, it no longer mattered what the galaxy thought. What mattered was clear. The line had been crossed. The trespass had been made, and when the Empire came again, it would not meet scattered colonies or unprepared outposts. It would meet a storm born of fire and grief, a storm older than the stars themselves. For humanity carried something deep in its blood, something even it did not fully understand, a memory of caves and fire, of swords and shields, of endless wars fought not for empire but for survival. That spirit, passed down through generations, now lit the eyes of every Terran. The Empire thought it was hunting prey, but it had stumbled into something else entirely. It had awakened the hunters, and as the fleets of Earth prepared to launch, one final message spread across every Terran broadcast, carried into every heart. Stand ready. The storm is coming. Humanity will not fall. The Terran Empire had always believed its fleets were unstoppable. Wherever their banners flew, silence followed. Worlds burned, cities fell, and no enemy had ever dared stand their ground. To the Empire, war was not a question of victory. It was only a matter of how long the prey would survive before the end. When their scouts reported that Terrans were building fleets, the Emperor laughed. "Let them gather their toys," he said. "When our armada arrives, their fire will vanish like smoke in the wind." So he ordered Admiral Vare to march. 200 Terran warships, sleek and merciless, moved toward Sol, the heart of humanity. It was a fleet strong enough to erase entire civilizations. To the Empire, this was not a battle. It was a lesson, but humanity was ready. At the edge of the Sol system, near the orbit of Pluto, Terran forces waited in silence. They were not as many, only 60 warships. To the Empire, this looked like defiance from fools. To humanity, it was resolve written in steel. The flagship of the Terran fleet was the Valiant Dawn, the first of Earth's hidden supercarriers. She was massive, her hull layered in armor forged from rare metals pulled from the belt, her engines burning with quiet fire. On her decks, thousands of men and women stood ready, each of them knowing that today might be their last day, but none of them willing to surrender. Commander Elias Reeve stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn. His eyes were fixed on the stars, where the Terran fleet appeared, black shadows blotting out the distant light. He felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. The first clash would decide everything, whether humanity would be seen as prey or as something far more dangerous. When the Terran ships approached, their admiral broadcast his words across the void. His voice was filled with arrogance, dripping with scorn. "Humans of Earth," he said, "you stand in the path of an empire older than your kind. You cannot win. Lower your weapons, bow your heads, and perhaps mercy will be given." On the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, silence followed. Every officer, every pilot, every crew member waited for their commander's reply. Elias Reeve leaned forward, his voice calm and sharp. "This is Terran space," he said. "You were warned. Leave now, or you will learn what it means to cross humanity." The Terran admiral laughed, a cruel echoing sound. "Then you will die." The first clash began. The Terran fleet moved like a storm, missiles and plasma fire tearing through the void. But the Terrans did not scatter. They did not break. They stood as one, their formation tight, their movements precise. For years they had studied war, learned from their own bloody history, and built weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Railguns thundered from Terran ships, sending slugs of metal at speeds that ripped through Terran shields. Plasma batteries unleashed waves of fire, tearing holes in ships that had once seemed invincible. Fighters swarmed like hornets, darting between cruisers, targeting engines, and striking with deadly accuracy. The Valiant Dawn roared to life, unleashing a barrage, so powerful that entire Terran cruisers split apart. The galaxy had never witnessed human war before. And now the Empire realized too late. It was not facing prey, it was facing predators. For hours, the battle raged. The Terrans outnumbered the Terrans 3-1, but the humans fought with something machines could not measure. They fought with rage for Proxima. They fought with love for New Carthage. They fought with the unbreakable truth that no one would take Earth from them. One by one, Terran ships fell. Their shields shattered under railgun storms. Their hulls broke apart under relentless fire. Admiral Vere's arrogance began to crack as his fleet suffered losses he had never imagined. "Impossible," he whispered, as another cruiser exploded in silence. "They are not supposed to fight like this." By the time the battle ended, space was littered with wreckage. Dozens of Terran warships burned, their hulks drifting among the stars. Only half of their fleet limped away, retreating in shame. The Terrans had lost ships too. Brave men and women had given their lives, and the wrecks of human vessels floated alongside the enemies. But humanity had not been broken. They had stood against the might of the Empire, and the Empire had been forced to retreat. When the last echoes of battle faded, a heavy silence filled the bridge of the Valiant Dawn. Commander Reeve looked at the wreckage, at the scars of war, at the stars now glowing faintly beyond the smoke of ships. His voice was quiet, but it carried across every channel, to every surviving soldier and to the Empire's retreating ships. "Let the galaxy hear this. Humanity does not kneel. This is our home. And to those who would trespass, this was only the beginning." Across Earth and her colonies, cheers and tears filled the air. For the first time in history, humanity had faced the full strength of an alien empire, and won. It was not victory alone. It was proof. Proof that humans were not fragile, not prey, not weak. Proof that they could stand against the storm. But in the halls of the Terran Empire, fear began to whisper. For the first time in 1,000 years, their fleets had been driven back. For the first time, an enemy had not broken under their power. And in that moment, the Emperor realized the truth. The humans were not a minor species. They were not fragile dreamers. They were a storm waiting to rise. And the first clash was only a warning of what was to come. The Terran Empire could not accept defeat. Not once in 1,000 years had their fleets been forced to retreat. Not once had their enemies stared into the void and refused to bow. And yet, the humans had done exactly that. The Emperor's fury burned hotter than the suns of 1,000 systems. He would not allow this defiance to remain unpunished. Every counselor, every general, every admiral was summoned to the grand halls of the imperial throne. The Emperor's voice thundered across the chamber. They laughed at our warnings. They dared to destroy our ships. They have insulted the Empire itself. Humanity will pay for their arrogance. Plans were drawn to crush the Terrans once and for all. A fleet 10 times larger than the one that had been repelled was assembled. Over 1,000 warships, bristling with weapons, engines blazing and carrying legions of soldiers, set course for Sol. The Empire believed that sheer force would erase the humans. They believed that numbers, firepower, and terror could accomplish what diplomacy could not. They did not understand that the humans had already learned something they could not teach, that survival is not always measured in ships, but in courage. On Earth, word of the approaching armada reached every colony, every city, every space station. There was fear, yes, but it was tempered by resolve. Humanity had learned the lesson of Proxima, the courage of New Carthage, and the taste of victory at Pluto. They knew the Empire's strength, but they also knew their own. Commander Elias Reeve called the council together once more. "They come to destroy us," he said. "We will show them that humanity does not kneel. We will fight for every child, every memory, every dream they have ever tried to crush. We do not fight for glory. We fight because we must." Every soldier, pilot, and technician understood the weight of their duty. Every person who had lost a family member, every colonist who had seen their home destroyed, now stood ready. Across the solar system, the Terran fleet grew in silent precision, each ship a testament to human ingenuity and determination. When the Empire's fleet arrived, it was more terrifying than anything the galaxy had seen. The void of space filled, with shadows as warships stretched across the horizon like a black ocean. Weapons hummed, shields glimmered, and the air of invincibility radiated from the Gerans. They struck first. The battle began with a cascade of fire, the Empire confident that this attack would crush humanity immediately. Yet the Terrans did not break. They had learned from every loss. They moved with coordination, each ship covering another, each strike calculated, precise, lethal. Terran railguns tore into the enemy's hulls. Plasma batteries unleashed torrents of energy that crippled entire squadrons. Fighters, nimble and relentless, darted between the massive ships, striking with speed and cunning that the Gerans had never encountered. And then came the civilians, the miners, the engineers, the students, the ordinary people. They had been trained, yes, but more than that, they had purpose. Every human on every ship, every station, every outpost knew that failure meant death. They fought not because of orders, but because of heart, because of the people they loved, because of the homes they refused to lose. By the second day, the Geran commanders realized that they had underestimated humanity. Their pride, their arrogance had blinded them to a truth that the Empire could not calculate. Humans did not break. They did not scatter. They adapted. They endured. Entire squadrons of the Geran fleet were destroyed, their massive warships torn apart by a combination of cunning tactics and raw determination. Reports of losses poured into the Emperor's throne room. Thousands of soldiers dead, hundreds of ships lost, and still, humanity stood. The Emperor's face turned red with rage, but even he could not ignore the numbers. "Impossible," he hissed. "They are too many, too relentless." Yet the humans did not pursue the Empire in vengeance. They held their positions, guarding their colonies, their solar system, their people. Every victory had a cost, and every cost had a lesson. Humanity had learned that restraint was as powerful as fury. The battle continued for weeks, each day more brutal than the last. The Empire poured in more ships, believing that the final blow was at hand, but every strike only strengthened humanity's resolve. Each loss of a Terran vessel was avenged. Each fallen soldier honored in the hearts of those who remained. Across the colonies, people looked up at the stars and whispered stories of bravery. Children learned the names of heroes who had given their lives, stories of ordinary people who had turned into legends. Humanity's courage became a living thing, growing stronger with each passing day, feeding the hearts of the fighters and inspiring all who watched. In the end, the Emperor was forced to retreat. His fleets were battered, his soldiers shaken, his pride shattered. The humans had not only defended their home, They had proven that no empire, no matter how vast, could bend their spirit, and across the galaxy, a new understanding was born. Humanity was not a species to conquer. They were a force, a storm, a people who would not kneel. And as the last Terran ships vanished into the void, Commander Reeves' voice carried across every channel, calm and resolute. Let this be clear, to all who watch. Humanity does not yield. We do not bow. Cross into our space, and you will awaken a fury that no empire can survive. The warning had been given. The price of arrogance had been paid, and the galaxy had learned, in no uncertain terms, that humans were not a species to be trifled with.